Mataji can start now.
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Jaya Braja Janiranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha Gopinath Shri Radhe Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadramma Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव नित्य गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल। जय श्रीपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतश्री श्रीमद् अभय चरणारविंद His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada की जय। जय ओम श्रीपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतश्री श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा गोपीनाथ भगवान की जय। शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। Hare Krishna. Welcome to this evening's lecture series themed on different topics from Srimad Bhagavatam. And yesterday and today we are looking at the beautiful pastime of the Gajendra Leela from Canto 8 of Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's get started. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambidamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhuter Mahadvirya Ima Puro Vibhu Nirmaya Shete Yadamosha Purusha Bhunter Gunam Shodasha Satmaka Solam Krishishta Bhagavan Vachamsi Me Shri Krishna Sharanam Sharanagatam Katha Amritam Satata Pibatam Bhakti Vedanta Markapantanam Sarvaloka Rishi Deva Janna Prasannam Sarvaloka Rishi Deva Janna Prasannam. Hare Krishna, everyone. So once again, welcome to this evening's series of lectures from ISKCON Sydney, themed on various topics from Srimad Bhagavatam. And right now we are looking at the beautiful Gajendra Leela from Canto 8 of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is chapters 2, 3 and 4. So yesterday we saw a little bit of the first part. So just to give a recap, so that for those who are joining us today, let us get a little introduction and then we will move on to reflect more on what we can learn from Gajendra, the elephant. So we see that in Canto 8, Chapter 1, Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadev Goswami are having a conversation, and here Shukadev Goswami is speaking about the various manus or the administrators of the universe. And he speaks about the first 4 manus. And he says how during the reign of each manu, the Supreme Lord appeared as the Manvantara Avatara to assist the Manu and the Indra who was ruling during that particular reign to facilitate their work and their activities. So during the first Manu's reign, that is Swayambhuva Manu's reign, the Lord appeared as Lord Kapila and as Lord Yajna Murti. Then during the second Manu, that is Swarochisha, the Lord appeared as Lord Vibhu. And then during the third Manu's reign, that is, who was called as Uttama, the Supreme Lord appeared as Satyasena. And then during the fourth Manu, who was called as the Tamasa Manu, the Supreme Lord appears as the son of Harimeda and Harini. And therefore, he appears with the name Lord Hari. So this Gajendra's pastime happens during the time when Lord Hari was appearing in the 4th Manvantara. That is during the 4th Manu as the Manvantara Avatara. So we know that there are different types of avatars of the Lord. Yuga Avatara, Purusha Avatara, Leela Avatara, Shakti Avesha Avatara, and Manvantara Avatara is the one that he takes during each Manu. And there are thousands and thousands of Manus, uncountable. So each time the Lord appears again and again and again. So Parikshit Maharaj is asking Shukadev Goswami, please tell me the pastime of how Lord Hari protected the elephant king Gajendra. I'm eager to hear more about that, because Shukadev Goswami had mentioned that Lord Hari during this fourth Manu's time, he protected Gajendra the elephant. So Parikshit Maharaj is very eager to hear more about that. So then, at the beginning of chapter 2, Shukdev Goswami begins to narrate this pastime. So he begins with a beautiful description of a place called Trikuta, which is a mountain in the Kshirosagar, or in the ocean of milk. This mountain was so huge. It was about 10,000 yojanas high, or 80,000 miles high, long and wide. And this beautiful mountain had many different peaks. And out of them, there were 3 principal peaks, which were made of iron, gold, and silver. And Srimad Bhagavatam beautifully explains and it describes the beauty of this mountain, Trikuta, of how these 3 peaks were shining brilliantly and they beautified all the directions around. And then at the foothills of the Trikuta mountain, because it is standing on the ocean of milk, the waves of the ocean would, come and splash against the foothills of the mountain. And they would produce emeralds that were just shining. And this mountain was filled with waterfalls and lakes and valleys and trees and plants and different types of flowers and fruits and different types of animals. And Srimad Bhagavatam explains very beautifully about each of these. And there were some beautiful caves in this Trikuta mountain. And in each of these caves, all the celestial beings, that is, the inhabitants of the heavenly planets, they would come and they would sport and play and have fun inside all these caves. And also they would be singing songs and dancing. And what happens, hearing all this, the sound vibrations of all the songs that are being sung by all these celestial beings like Gandharvas, the Kinnaras, the Charanas, the Siddhas, all the lions that were there in the Trikuta mountain or near the valleys and in the forests, they would all roar, like to say, who's this, who's singing? We can hear your sound and here we are. So they would roar very loudly. And also there were beautiful waterfalls and the lakes which had crystal clear water. And on top of all these, the water, there were golden lotuses. And from these lotuses, there were the pollen dust that were falling down and they were spread across the water. And that would emit such beautiful fragrance that was carried in the breeze. And Srimad Bhagavatam explains about all the beautiful varieties of trees that we could see there, like the date trees, the palm trees, coconut trees, and different types of flowers like parijatas, mandaras, pialas, champaka, and so many different types of flowers. And it is also described that in these places, because the Gandharvas and all the heavenly beings, they would come and take a bath, the fragrance from their body would touch the water and the fragrance from their body would be carried across with the breeze. So all this created such a beautiful atmosphere in Trikuta. And being a mountain, there are valleys as well. So in one of the valleys, there was a beautiful garden, or there were many gardens that were maintained by different demigods. And one of the gardens, which was called as Rituman, was maintained by Lord Varuna. And in this garden, there was a lake. And this lake was again very beautiful. So the lake was again surrounded by different flowers, trees, and birds and swans, the water birds like chakravakas, the cranes, and birds were chirping melodiously. And, it was like you could hear the songs just spreading all across this lake. And this mountain stood gloriously, brilliantly shining in the middle of the ocean. So Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he explains, what a beautiful, exhaustive description of a beautiful world that we can see, which is beyond our understanding, and something that exists above this material universe. So all that we know and what we can see is what is around us in this earthly planet. But just by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we are getting the knowledge of all that we can see in the spiritual world. And we can see, and just by hearing, we can see them. And we can appreciate the beauty of the spiritual world, which is all Krishna's abode, which is Krishna's creation. So, coming back to our pastime. So what happened? Now, we saw such a beautiful setting in the Rituman garden and the lake. And here comes Gajendra, the elephant king. Now, Gajendra was such a powerful elephant, and he was the king of that whole forest. He was the king of all the animals that were there around the Rituman garden. And Srimad Bhagavatam says that all these animals, they would be afraid of Gajendra and they would run away. Even very scary animals like lions, tigers, the rhinoceros, and even the chamari deer, they would all run away being fearful of Gajendra the elephant. And there were some other animals like the foxes, the wolves, the rabbits, the monkeys. They would all just loiter around elsewhere. At least they didn't come into the vision of Gajendra because, he's the king. And they were just by themselves. So what we understand from this is that Gajendra was like the controller of that whole place. He was like the king of all the animals of the forest. And one day he went to this lake along with his whole family, all the she-elephants and his little kids, the elephants, the little elephants and his friends. And they went there to take a bath and to have a shower and to play and have fun. And Gajendra, he drank this cool water from the lake. And he was, just feeling that pleasant satisfaction of drinking the cool water from this beautiful lake. And then he also took all this water with his trunk and he was spraying it on all his wives, all the she-elephants and all his children. So this way, Gajendra was having fun. He was really, and he was also kind of intoxicated and he was like in his best form, essentially. And at this time, what happened? There was a crocodile that suddenly appeared. And this crocodile, being an animal that lived on the water and the land, he's an amphibian. And on seeing that, someone has come into his territory, what did the crocodile do? He went and caught the leg of Gajendra. And he wouldn't leave him. And Gajendra initially thought, okay, I can just, I can just get rid of this. It's not a big thing. And he tried to pull himself out, but he couldn't because the crocodile's hold was so strong. And then Gajendra was trying hard and hard and hard, and he was struggling, trying to just pull himself out, but still he couldn't. And all his friends, his wives, his children, none of them could help him. Even they tried pulling him, but they couldn't. And it is said that this fight between this crocodile and the elephant went on for 1,000 years. Can we imagine? For 1,000 years, the elephant and the crocodile, they were fighting back and forth. And in spite of all this, what happened? Gajendra was still thinking that no, somehow I can get rid of the clutches of this crocodile on my own. So that was his mindset at that point, and he kept struggling. And what was happening towards the end? Slowly, he lost all his mental, physical, and his sensual strength. That is what is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. That is, he mentally gave up and he said, I think I can't fight anymore at this point. And physically, he had lost his power. And sensually, all that, desire to enjoy, even that had diminished. Whereas the crocodile was becoming more enthusiastic and more strong. And, the crocodile was like just holding so strongly. And at this point, suddenly an internal change happens in the heart of Gajendra. Now, this is a turning point in this whole pastime. He realizes and he feels, this is not something that I can control on my own. This is not something that I can deal with on my own. There is a supreme power who is beyond me, who is controlling this situation. And it is that supreme power who is giving shelter and protection to everyone. And therefore, I have to surrender to him and I have to pray and offer my prayers to him. And only then I can come out of this struggle. Only then I can be relieved of this difficult situation. So very beautifully, Gajendra, he says at the end of this, the second chapter, Gajendra is teaching all of us a beautiful lesson. So Gajendra is saying, Yakashchanesho balinontakoragat prachanda vegat abhidavato bhrisham bhitam prapannam paripati yadbhayat mrityu pradhavatyaranam tam imahi. So in this beautiful verse, Gajendra is saying that, there is a supreme person. He still doesn't know the name of who that person is. But he just says that there is a supreme power who is very powerful. And even though the serpent of time chases everyone, but still, even that time or even death runs away in fear of this supreme person. And therefore, I have to surrender. And therefore, I surrender unto him who is the shelter of everyone, who gives shelter to all the personalities, all the sages, and all the demigods. And Srila Prabhupada says that to reach this understanding is the ultimate goal of life. For us to know that there is the Supreme Lord who is all-powerful, who is beyond us, and that we have to understand our position as His servant. And therefore, by surrendering and taking shelter of that Supreme Lord is our only solution, or is our only answer in any given situation that we may be in. So in chapter 3 of this pastime, or in chapter 3 of this canto 8, we see the beautiful prayers that Gajendra begins to offer. So Gajendra, fixing his mind in his heart, now he has realized that I have to surrender and I have to start offering prayers. Now Gajendra, in his previous life, who was he? And we will look at that more in detail later on. But Gajendra was Indradyumna Maharaj, who was a great Vaishnava, who was a wonderful devotee of the Lord, and who was always engaged in serving and in worshipping the Supreme Lord. And because of the past devotional service that he had done, Gajendra remembered all that, and he remembered a mantra of prayers that he had chanted. And therefore, as even though he was in this elephant body, he could remember that prayer. And here Srila Prabhupada explains, and he tells us that, whatever devotional service we perform, it is carried on along with us to our future. Whether we take another birth or whether we, go back to Krishna. For devotees who are constantly engaged in the service of Krishna, our destination of going back to Him is guaranteed. And therefore, whatever devotional service we perform, it is all carried along with us. And that is why it is very important for us to engage in bhakti. It is said, Tivrena bhakti yogena yejeta purusham param. So with complete determination and with that strong faith, we have to keep serving Shri Krishna by singing, by chanting, by hearing about Him, by decorating Him, by dressing Him, by making garlands for Him, by cooking for Him. Whatever activities we do, it is all carried on with us to our next life, or it is carried on along with us to our next destination. So Gajendra offers many prayers. It is, about 28 verses. That is starting from the second verse to verse 29. Gajendra is offering many beautiful prayers. So what I thought, we will look at just one prayer a little bit in depth, and we will look at all the beautiful things that he says about the Supreme Lord. Because Gajendra is addressing Shri Krishna with many different attributes of the Lord. He's qualifying Him, and in each verse, he addresses the Lord with a particular name or with a particular feature of the Lord. So we'll try to meditate on some of them today. So in one of the verses, he says, Nayasya deva rishaya padam vidur jantu punarkor hati gantumiritum yatha natasya kritibir vicheshtato duratyayano kramana samavatu. Here, Gajendra is saying that just as an artist who is dressed and who is wearing different attractive dresses and, he's dancing on the stage, just as he's not understood by the audience who are watching him, they cannot understand the movements of that person. Similarly, the supreme artist, who is the Lord, who is Shri Krishna, his activities and his movements, his features cannot be understood by anyone. Not even the sages or the demigods can understand. Then what to speak about someone who's like me, who's an animal, Jantu, he says, someone who's ignorant, because he's in the body of an elephant and it is in the, with the mode of ignorance, he says, how can anyone understand? And then he says, no one can even express without words the power of Shri Krishna. So no matter what we do, we can describe, we can speak, but we are all trying our best to do this just to please the Lord and so that we can get purified. But it is impossible for us to glorify and speak about the Lord in entirety because he is Vibhu and we are Anu. We are tiny particles which are a part of Shri Krishna. We are just a little tiny, like a little dust. And Krishna's greatness is so much that we can never ever fully accomplish by speaking about him or glorifying him. It is just not enough. It's a bit like, when we see the river Ganga, and if we were to take a little glass of water and pour into it, how does it have any effect? But by doing that, at least we feel that we are making an offering for Shri Krishna. And that way we become satisfied. So that's what it is. So in this verse, Gajendra is saying that may that Supreme Lord give me protection. So from this verse, we see that none of us can understand the activities or the form or the movements of the Supreme Lord. His activities are wonderful. It is beyond our comprehension. The Lord is called as Adokshaja, or who is beyond our sense perception. And in some of the verses ahead, so just considering the time and that we have a lot to cover, so Gajendra, he's addressing the Lord as Ashcharya Karmane. He says that it is wonderful, your activities are wonderful. So just as, we see in all the pastimes of Shri Krishna in Vrindavana, whether he's just kicking the cart with his leg or whether he's just being carried by the whirlwind, Trinavrata, or whether he's just getting into the mouth of the snake Agasura and then he's delivering him, or whether he's just lifting the Govardhan hill with his tiny little finger, or whether he's dancing on Kalinga and he's suppressing his ego, or whether the beautiful dance that he performs with the gopis and the lovely exchanges that he has with them, or whether the way Mother Yashoda just binds him with a tiny rope. He allows her to bind him. And then Lord Krishna, as in the later part, he marries 16,108 wives. Now, all this is just wonderful and it is beyond our understanding. It is Ashcharya Karmane. So Krishna, with his power, can do anything if he so desires. So that is something that we can very clearly learn here. And there's a beautiful verse from Krishnasya Mahima. It says, Ambodistalatam stalam jaladitam Dulilava shailatam Shailo mritkanatam trinam kulishatam Vajram trinakshenatam Bhani shitalatam himam dahanatam Ayati yasyechaya Leela durlalitadbhuta vyasanine Krishnaya tasmai namaha. So this beautiful verse explains that Shri Krishna, if he so desires, he can make an ocean into a dry land. And he can make a dry land into an ocean. He can make a tiny particle of dust into a mountain, and he can make a mountain into a tiny particle of dust. And then he can make a blade of grass into thunderbolt, and he can make the thunderbolt into an insignificant blade of grass. And he can make the blazing fire into snow, and he can make the cool snow into blazing fire. So, is this, something that we can even imagine as possible? So we're all living in this situation with COVID around and trying to deal with it all by ourselves, thinking, vaccines are going to help us, or all these restrictions, not moving here, not moving there, just, be stuck at home. Yes, we have to follow all the health advice and all that is happening at this level. But beyond this, we have to understand that there is a supreme controller, Shri Krishna, because of whose wish and desire this is all happening. And therefore, only by offering prayers to him and by constantly chanting his holy names and chanting his glories and by hearing about him and surrendering to him, we can detach ourselves from this situation. So from this whole Gajendra Leela, we can learn that how we should not allow any situation to touch us. So His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj says that misery is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So whether we like it or not, there will be some difficulties around us in our life. We can't help it. But at the same time, whether we choose to suffer that or whether we choose to be affected by that is in our hands. Because if we take shelter of Krishna and if we try to keep ourselves busy and engaged in serving Krishna, then none of these external situations can touch us. So Gajendra goes on to address the Supreme Lord as Sakshine, who is the witness in everyone's heart. So we see in Bhagavad Gita how Lord Krishna says, Gatir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasa Sharanam Sukrit Prabhava Pralayastanam Nidanam Bijam Avyayam. So he says, I am the goal, I am the sustainer, and I am the witness. So Shri Krishna is witnessing every little activity and action of us that happens. So at no time we can think that we are independent of his presence. He is always there in our heart. So he knows what are our desires, what are our wishes, what do we want to do or what we don't want. So Krishna residing in our heart witnesses all this, all our activities. And according to each one's surrender to him, he pleases us and he takes care of us and he protects us personally. And then Gajendra addresses the Lord as Atma Pradipaya. So what does that mean? The one who is self-effulgent and also the one who gives enlightenment to everyone. So again we see in the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna says, Tesham evanukampatam maham ajnanajam tamaha nashyamatma bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata. So residing in our heart, again, as the shining lamp of knowledge, he removes our ignorance and he gives us the knowledge of how we can revive our relationship back with him, how we can understand our position, who we are as the soul, as the servant of Krishna, that we have to serve him constantly. So all this knowledge he gives us as the shining lamp, Atma Pradipaya. And then Gajendra says he is Paramatmane, that is the super soul. And then Sattvena Pratilabhyaya, the Lord who is achieved by devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada explains that just with our mental and our physical capabilities, there is no way that we can achieve the Lord, but only by devotional service. Only by serving him can we attain love for him and prema for him. So like this, Gajendra addresses the Lord in many different ways. He says, Sukha Samvide, the one who gives happiness, as Shantaya, the one who is completely peaceful, as Ghoraya, the one who is fierceful. That is, we see the Nrsimhadev avatar. When the Lord took, he was so fierceful and only Prahlad Maharaj could go near him. And then he says, Brihate, or the one who has unlimited opulence. So we will continue because there's just a little bit more to go and then we can end. So Gajendra at the end, he says, I'm just an animal. And now, with losing all my strength, I'm completely surrendered to you. So please take charge of me. In that complete mood of surrender, he also says that I don't wish to live anymore after I am released from the clutches of this crocodile. Because he says, what's the use of being in an elephant body? So he just wants that complete release and he wants to go back to Krishna. And at this time, what happens? Because of his sincerity, his devotion, and the way he surrendered, Lord Hari, or Sri Vishnu, he immediately appeared there on the Garuda, along with this Sudarshan Chakra. And he came and he pulled Gajendra out from the crocodile's mouth, and sending his Sudarshan Chakra, he just severed the crocodile and he liberated him. Now, as soon as he did this, what happened? Gajendra, immediately he attained the Sarupya Mukti, or he attained the four-handed form of the Supreme Lord with Shankhajakra, Gada and Padma. And it is said that there are 5 types of liberation. Sashti, having the same opulences as the Lord, or Salokya, living in the same planet of the Lord, or Samipya, living as a personal associate of the Lord, or Sayujya, which is merging with the Brahman, and Sarupya, which is attaining a form of the Supreme Lord. But there is one difference. The Supreme Lord has the Srivatsa and the Kaustubha gem, which is exclusive to him. But all the other features Gajendra attained. And as soon as he was liberated, he took a beautiful lotus flower from the lake and he offered that to the Supreme Lord. Or rather, actually, even before he was liberated, I beg your pardon, as soon as Lord Hari appeared, Gajendra offered this lotus with this trunk. And then, just with that humble mood of surrender, even though he was in that difficult situation with that acute pain, Srimad Bhagavatam describes. So we learn that, even though we are in any painful situation, our offerings for the Lord should continue. It should not stop. So then what happened? As soon as Sri Hari, he delivered Gajendra, he also delivered the crocodile. So as soon as the Sudarshan Chakra went and sliced the crocodile, he turned into a Gandharva, a beautiful heavenly celestial being. So we learn that it is later explained here about the previous lives of Gajendra and this crocodile, why they were involved in this whole pastime, why it happened. So it is said that Gajendra in his previous life was Indradyumna Maharaj, who was a wonderful Vaishnava. And once he had gone into a cottage, his own ashram in the Malaya hills, and he was performing severe austerities there. And at that time, what happened? Agastya Muni had come there along with all his disciples. And because Indradyumna Maharaj had taken the Mauna Vrata or the vow of silence, what happened? He did not receive the Muni appropriately. So therefore, immediately Agastya Muni cursed him and he said, because you behave like an uneducated person, you would be born as a dumb elephant, with ignorance. Therefore, Maharaj Indradyumna became Gajendra. But then we see, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, how even this curse was a blessing. So throughout Srimad Bhagavatam, we see many sages, they are always cursing somebody. For example, Mandavya Muni, he curses Yamaraj, who then becomes Vidura. And then we see how the son of Shamikrishi, he curses Parikshit Maharaj, but then it becomes an opportunity for him to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So like that, here, even though Agastya Muni had cursed Indradyumna Maharaj, but because of all the devotional service that he had performed, he, within just one lifetime, he could go back to the Supreme Lord. He could go back to the Vaikuntha planets. And who was the crocodile? So there's another little history there. So the crocodile was King Hu. It's such an interesting name, isn't it? So beautiful. Bhagavatam has very beautiful names of personalities. So he was called as King Hu was a Gandharva. He was a king of the Gandharvas, or the celestial singers and dancers. And this king, once he was enjoying with a lot of women in a lake, in some water. And there was a sage called Devala Muni who was having a bath. And King Hu, by mistake, he pulled his leg. And because of that, this sage, he cursed King Hu to become a crocodile. But again, this curse became a blessing because in his next life, being a crocodile, he was delivered by the Supreme Lord himself. But before that, we have to see what actually caused that. As soon as he was cursed, King Hu, he pardoned himself. He asked the sage for his compassion, he said, "Please forgive me." And therefore, the sage then said that you will be delivered when Lord Hari, he delivers Gajendra. So that way, even the crocodile got his Gandharva form. So as soon as he was liberated, he attained the beautiful form of the Gandharva. And at this time, what happened? All the demigods, the sages, they all showered flowers on Gajendra, the elephant, who turned into Vishnumurti. He had this beautiful form of the Lord. And the crocodile turned into the Gandharva. It was such a beautiful scene. And there were kettle drums that were playing and flowers showering on them, and all of them were singing and dancing. And it was such a wonderful setting. And at that time, the Supreme Lord, he also said, and he gave a blessing to Gajendra. And then he said that whoever narrates and hears this pastime, whoever hears this by waking up early in the morning, and they will receive all auspiciousness. So it is said in Srimad Bhagavatam that when we wake up in the morning and when we meditate on the Trikuta mountain, when we meditate on the beautiful form of Sri Krishna, all his features, all his activities, the beautiful description of the Gajendra Leela, then we can negate all our bad dreams. If we had any bad dreams, that will go away. And then also, whoever hears this narration, they will be promoted to the higher planets. And then they will not be affected by the effects of Kali Yuga. So, but our endeavor is not getting all these benefits, but to simply please the Lord. We hear the Lord's pastimes for his pleasure, for our purification. Although all this is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, that these things, they just happen naturally anyway. So there are many beautiful lessons that we can learn from the Gajendra Leela, as we can see. So firstly, that the Supreme Lord is our ultimate shelter, no matter what. And in any situation, we should not be affected by what is happening to us. We just have to surrender to the Lord. And just by the touch of the Supreme Lord, we can ultimately attain him. So Srila Prabhupada beautifully explains that how when the Lord, he liberated Gajendra, because of his personal touch, he went back to him. So like that, when we perform deity worship, when we make garlands for the Lord, when we dress him, when we make bhoga offerings and offer to him, all this, by doing all this, by hearing about him, by singing about him, we are actually touching the Supreme Lord, because the deity is not different from Shri Krishna himself. And we also see in, our acharyas explain how Gajendra also, in a way, he represents all of us, the jivas. And the water that he was in is like the material existence. And the crocodile is like the sinful desires that creep into our heart and that, holds a very strong hold on us. But when we take the shelter of Shri Krishna, then we can be relieved of all this. So on that beautiful note of hearing that Shri Krishna is our ultimate shelter, we will chant a beautiful verse for his pleasure, and we will end here. Shri Krishna Vrishni Kula Pushkara Joshadayin क्ष्मानिर्जरद्विजपशुदधिवृद्धिकारिन् उद्धर्मसार्वरहरक्षितिराक्षसद्रो आकल्पम् आर्कमर्हन् भगवन्नमस्ते आकल्पमार्कमर्हन् भगवन्नमस्ते आकल्पमार्कमर्हन् भगवन्नमस्ते. So let us bow down again and again and again to Shri Krishna, to all our gurus, serve Vaishnavas, and with their blessings, ultimately go back to the spiritual world. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you everyone. Please join us tomorrow for another interesting lecture from ISKCON Sydney. Hari Bol.